This week on The Real Housewives of Potomac.
We're worried because the case that they're presenting doesn't look good. What would you say to us or to me about that?
Yo, what is up, everybody? Welcome back. Today we're going to be recapping The Real Housewives of Potomac Season 10 Reunion Part 3. Let's get right into this. Alright, this is the final recap of Season 10. I thought this was a phenomenal season. Definitely one of the best for Potomac. And yeah, let's get into the last recap. The reunion as a whole was also a very good reunion. For it to have been 3 parts, there was not a single part that was boring or, matter of fact, I felt like they might have needed a 4th part because they were moving on from some things so fast because there was just so much to get into. But let's get this started. So Monique came out last week and Monique said that something came back to her regarding Stacey. So she pulls out her phone, she shows everyone something. It's like a video, but I guess it's not really a video, it's a video, but what she's showing them is an audio. So they're all listening to an audio, and all we hear as the audience is bleep. So the entire thing, it was like a minute long, is bleeped. So they're all listening to it, but we don't hear any of it. But we see the ladies react to it, and they all look shocked. After listening to it, Andy says, "Stacey, did you tell Chris that Monique was filming with her children?" And Stacey says, "No, I did not. I just went through a divorce and custody issues. Why would I ever get involved with your family, Monique? My family's back together. I talked to my husband. I'm worried about my family. Why would I want to hurt yours?" And then Andy says, "Well, why would bleep say that to Monique?" And Stacey says, "I don't know, but I've never called Chris during filming. I never even talked to him." And Monique says, "Well, you literally showed me messages between y'all, so y'all were definitely communicating." Andy then asks Wendy for her opinion, and he says, "Wendy, it looks like you're looking at Stacey, waiting for her to confess." And Wendy says, "I feel like the tides are turning." Whoa. For Wendy to say the tides are turning that means that the audio was probably bad. And, it's hard to talk about it because we didn't hear it. But Monique says, "I will always believe bleep over everyone." So just based on the way the ladies were talking and kind of in the the context, I guess, that the way they were saying some certain things regarding this, I'm assuming that the video was something that Monique's child said. Especially for her to say, "I'll believe blank over anyone." I think it must have been her children. One of her children probably said something, but I don't know. So all the ladies are jumping to Monique's defense, especially Tia, Kay, and Jazzy, because, they're sort of eating this up because they don't like Stacey. But what I will say is, as much as I do think that, we talked about this last week, I thought Monique's return was a flop. She annoyed me a lot this season, which I was surprised by because I've always loved Monique. But with that being said, if this behind the scenes, contacting ex-husband, talking about kids, if they're filming, if all of this is true, that's not okay. And that's why when people say, "I don't care that Stacey lies," I'm not with that, because if you can lie about something so small, you can definitely lie about something that's really big. So yeah, I'm not into liars, which, most of them lie anyway, but okay. So then they switch topics. Andy says, "Let's talk about hosting." So they show a package of clips from the trip to Nevis and the trip to Colorado, and they touch on Gizelle and how, she excluded Stacey from certain things when she was hosting the trip, like she didn't have an embroidered robe for Stacey. They also joke about Angel having them always do like these silent circle moments when they hung out, which, I would appreciate that. I'd like to meditate, not gonna lie. They also joke about Angel, Ashley, and Wendy. They were singing the national anthem. Like, are they Destiny's Child? They talk about Stacey's potato salad, and they ask Tia what did her coworkers think, because one of those events that they all went to, Tia's co-workers were there. So it was all fun. The lighthearted stuff that happened this season. So then they actually kind of talk about the trip to Colorado. So Andy says to Angel, the ladies gave you a lot of, blowback for having them in different homes, different houses. And Angel says, yeah, and I see why. That is not the way that group trips are done in this group. I see that now. Andy says, well, a lot of people did like that you put Gizelle and Ashley in a small room together. And Angel's like, yeah, I thought they deserved it and I needed a little get back. And he asks if anyone thought that perhaps Gizelle overstepped by sort of taking over the Colorado trip. Kay says, I did. And then Gizelle says, of course you did, but you were not there. You had water, okay, and we didn't. Angel says, yeah, and I'm really sorry that everyone went through that. And Gizelle says, but you didn't say that to us in the moment. You're apologizing now, but you didn't apologize back then. And Angel says, I also wasn't on a text thread that everyone else was in. The only reason I even knew that the issues were happening was because I called Jazzy to see how all y'all were doing, and she's the one that told me. And Gizelle says, yeah, but as a host, you should have been texting us about everything. And Angel says, honestly, I wanted to solve the problem when I heard there was a problem and kind of get that solution so then we can get everyone to a better location. Andy then asks, how did you all get so lost? And Angel says, someone dropped me a pin who was at the location, but when we went to that location, nothing was there. First of all, what is a pin? I've actually never heard of that until this season. What is that? A drop a pin? I don't really know what that means. Like, I know what an address is. Give me the address. I'll put on maps. Anyway, they moved on pretty fast from all this. There's been a lot of chatter that production set this disaster up. Part of me thinks, what if someone from production sent Angel said pin to get them lost? I don't know, just a thought. Anyway, Andy says, we've never had a group trip in a gas station. And then here comes Gizelle. I think that her feelings and being upset, being mad about the house situation, those are valid, because I get it, and no one wants to be in a place without water or air conditioning or those essential things. But there's a way to express that. But then here comes like the mean girl, this woman who thinks she owns Denver, Miss Denver, Colorado. And then Angel's like, I didn't say I owned it. I've sat here, I've taken responsibility for everything that went wrong, and upon reflection I definitely would have done things differently. So that was it. Andy wraps it up. I am kind of glad that they didn't dwell on this too much. Then, you guys, outside of the building, we see the Grand Dame arrive. She gets there, and I mean, listen, as frustrating as Karen can make us with her BS at times, look at her. Does she not look like she runs this? She looks great. Now, this is an entrance. So, at this point, Jazzy is dismissed. Goodbye. And honestly, Jazzy can leave. We don't really need her back. On paper, she sounds great. She's really pretty. She's a wag. But she's weird. When she's in some of these arguments, she becomes weird. So then Karen comes out. I thought that perhaps it would have been towards like the second half. But no, 15 minutes into this third part, she is out. She looked great. I actually think that she's one of the best dressed of the cast this reunion. So she got first chair, as she should. And then Andy's like, oh, the Grand Dame, well, you did say that you're dropping that title, right? And she's like, well, people don't want me to drop it, so I'm going to give people what they want. Gizelle says that she's excited that Karen is back. Ashley says that this feels like old times. And then Wendy says that she has not seen Karen, but she's happy that Karen is on the other side of everything that she went through. So Karen has watched this season, and it looks like she gave the new girls her approval. She says that her heart did go out to Angel specifically at times, and she kind of wished that she would have just, told Gizelle to F off so she could have let it go. Then Karen and Monique, they have a little moment since they're out there together. Andy says, who was the most supportive from the group to you, Karen? And Karen says Gizelle. She left notes in my mailbox, and I still have them. They made me smile. Andy says, well, what did you think of Gizelle saying that she hoped that you would have been in the elders section of the jail? And Karen says, I ignored her ass. So Andy then reminds us that Karen and Stacey left things not on a good note. So Karen asks Stacey, did you lie again this year? And Stacey's like, what did I lie about? And then Karen's like, well, last year you lied about the boyfriend who wasn't your boyfriend. Now this year you're not dating Chris, but you might be dating Chris. So is it true? And Stacey says, no, that's not true at all. Karen says, listen, I'm all for new beginnings, but I can't take the lies. And Stacey says, well, I'd like a new beginning. And Karen says, of course, but I'm not going to do the lies because I know. Now, I am surprised that Andy brought this up and kind of held Karen's feet to the fire a little bit. So he says to Karen, in our one-on-one interview, you were hesitant to call yourself an alcoholic. Shouldn't part of being an addict be owning up to what you are? And Karen's like, she goes on her word salad. She's like, I'm in recovery for the rest of my life. It's what I'd like to call it. And I mean, I can give her that. Sometimes maybe you need to rephrase or reword things personally in your mind. I just hope that she works on it, though. Andy then brings up how Karen got so much support from Bravo celebrities at BravoCon, but he also mentions that a certain percentage of the fans who are against her returning and don't think that she should be given a platform. And Karen says people have a right to their opinion, but she has a right to thrive. And Gizelle says, yeah, and Karen did serve her time. And I tend to agree with Gizelle when it comes to this. If people serve their time, there shouldn't be any reason for them to continue paying for what they did, unless it's something very, very bad. Like if somebody killed someone or abused someone, like sexually, like if it's an extreme like that, then yeah, no. But I don't think that just because you went to prison, your life should end. Like, they brought back Charrisse, they brought Karen back, and if they're gonna be fair, they might as well bring back Jen Shah. I mean, why not? But yeah, I agree with Gizelle on that. Monique then gets emotional. She says to know Karen is to know walls. She says that she's seen the walls come down when Karen's parents passed away, and she's seeing them come down again right now, as Karen is going through all this. So she cried. Karen appreciated her words. Andy again thanks Karen for the interview. The other ladies, especially Gizelle and Ashley, feel like Karen was accountable, or at least she was more accountable than she was the year before that. So I guess they're satisfied with that. But Andy does remind Karen that while Karen in the interview did admit to a story that Ashley gave at the reunion last year, Karen didn't believe the story Wendy gave. So here at the reunion, he's kind of asking her about it, and Karen doubles down again. She says, honestly, I don't believe Wendy. I don't think anyone's talking to her about me. Who are they? So she was upset. So then they move on to Wendy and Karen, the beef between them. So last year, Karen, remember, she sent in that video to the reunion where she pretty much thanked everyone except Wendy. Wendy said to Karen, yes, you can thank anyone. You can give anyone that you want their flowers, but I'm not going to lie and say that it didn't sting. Karen says, well, I think it's important to be real and be honest. We became distant because I felt betrayed by you. I feel like you betrayed me when you went over there with Stacey. And then Wendy's like, wait a minute, the betrayal was from you. I also remember when we went to a store and you called my mother a witch. So then they show a flashback. Now this scene I distinctly remember because this scene had been on the season trailer for last season, but I remember it had never been shown, so a lot of us fans were like, what happened? So it finally was shown tonight as a flashback. So in this scene, Wendy and Karen were out at a store, and in the scene, Karen says to Wendy, when people were attacking your mother and calling her a witch, I had your back, why didn't you have my back? And then Wendy responds by saying, I've always had your back when people bring up your DUI, and for you to have just used the W word, I wouldn't have expected that from you. So that was the flashback. Back to the reunion. Wendy says, you called my mom a witch. You betrayed me. Now, wait a minute, Wendy. That is not true. We just saw the scene. Karen said people were calling her a witch, which they definitely were. So you are wrong on that. Karen didn't call her a witch. But nevertheless, Wendy also says that Karen, you talked to Stacey about me. Now, that's valid. And I think that's kind of where it all started. Because remember, Stacey said to Mia last season that Karen had like a sit down with her before she started filming and had talked poorly about Wendy. So I think that's where this all really stems from. Now, Karen says to Wendy, and no disrespect to your mother, I actually like your mother. I particularly liked when she told you to shut the F up this season. Even Wendy was like, Karen. Karen says, you need to be quiet. So then Andy's like, well, that's kind of tough because that's a personal moment that she had a really tough moment that she had with her mother, but you both feel betrayed by one another, so I'm just going to move forward. So then they move on to the biggest topic of the night, Wendy. So they take a look back at some of the scenes from the season. Now, some of these were, the ones that were filmed before the arrest. So they show the package, and they were shady. They particularly highlighted a lot of like Wendy's spending on like the renovation of the home and everything like that. So they show that. They also show the scene where Wendy and her mom fight that Karen just referenced, and then they obviously show Wendy getting arrested. And something that is new that we see in this package is that we see some of the women and their reactions the day of the day of when the news broke. We hadn't seen that before. So yeah, they were all disappointed. They were shocked. Some of them were heartbroken, like particularly Stacey. Tia said, as Nigerians we're stigmatized as being scammers, why do this? And then Angel had said that all of Wendy's accusations against her had all been a red herring, but she hoped that justice would be served. So yeah, we see all of that. After watching all of that, Andy asks Angel, what did you mean by that when you said that you hope justice would be served? And Angel says, I just hope that she gets her day in court. For me, it did shock me. She made a lot of indictments about me all season. I had sort of become a whipping boy of sorts. She was going through something that she wasn't sharing and using. She was using me as a red herring. And then Ashley's like, oh, that's not fair. That's a reach. And I was like, oh, so now you want to defend Wendy, Ashley? Andy then says to Kay, Ashley, and Gizelle, and he says, in the clip, the three of you, you didn't really look like concerned friends, really. And Kay says, well, I stand by everything that I said. I was shocked, but when I think of Wendy and I's dynamic, I think that this is something Wendy already knew was coming. And then Giselle's like, well, I don't. I think the opposite. I actually don't think Wendy had any idea of this. I do feel bad for the children. And then interesting, Gizelle brings up a conversation from last year when Wendy said that she didn't ever handle her finances. But nevertheless, Gizelle says she was disappointed. Andy then asks Wendy for her thoughts. Wendy says, my home was broken into. I thought she was going to do the Erika Jane monologue. Tom's home was broken into. He confronted the burglar. My son went rolling down 50 times. But no, she is sticking to the story. So she's like, on 2020, whatever, we went on vacation and our home was broken into. And she says that when they went home, their daughter went to her room and said, oh, the dog must have made a mess. And then Eddie ran up and said, oh no, something happened, let's call the police. Anyway, they're sticking to the story, which I'm not surprised that she's not going to admit that that this didn't happen. So she's telling the story. Now, what I found interesting was that the police officer, one of them who came when they called initially about this supposed burglary, is the same cop who went there the day they got arrested. So that's kind of crazy, right? But Wendy's point is that she didn't know. And I don't think they knew. I don't think that they knew that they were being investigated until the day of their arrest. Obviously, if they really did fake it, they knew that they faked it and that it was fake. But I don't think they knew they were going to get arrested until they did. Andy then asks Karen for her opinion. And Karen says to Wendy, my heart does break for your children. I hope that all the charges are cleared off so that you can go home to them. Right now when I just told you to shut the F up, I kind of said it out of context. I didn't want you to do what you just did. I would have answered nothing on this stage. You're talking too much, Wendy. Stop talking. I don't want you to go to jail. Stop talking. Stop with the interviews. Take it from the Karen you used to like. When you talk, they hear you. You should have just said to Andy right now, I respectfully cannot answer that. I wish you would have just done that. It's for the best. And Wendy says, I received that and thank you. But, prior to coming here, my legal counsel, they knew I was coming. They knew the questions. And what I just said right now is already on public records. So I didn't say anything that's new. Karen says, I just want you to be careful because everything can be used against you. They can twist things. Andy then asks Wendy about her mom and sister. Wendy says that they have rallied around her, so they are supporting her. Andy brings up, the chatter that the fans have been having, saying that Wendy spent too much damn money on her, providing for her mother, the home renovations, the outfits that she has. Wendy says that people can have their narrative, but she's not going to respond. Andy then brings up the aliases that apparently they had, the Hennessy and Pam Oliver. She says it's not true. Andy says that the prosecutors claim that Wendy and Eddie have very little money and are in debt. Wendy says that's their opinion. He then asks, how is the marriage? And Wendy says that this has definitely tested their marriage, but because they're both reaching rock bottom, they're there for each other. Andy then asks a pretty serious question. He says, who will look over the kids? Like, do you have a plan? And then Wendy says, I pray to God that we don't get there. Andy says, well, we all care about you, but the case they are presenting, it's not looking good. Wendy says, let's just see it play out. A lot has been corrected in court already. Andy then sort of gives Wendy her flowers. He says, your time on the show, you've led with your education, your culture, your family. And then she cries and she thanks Andy for always believing in her. And she says, let's see it play out. You've always been a champion for me. You give the best hugs. Andy then asks Karen what advice would she give Wendy. And Karen says that she hopes that Wendy doesn't go through what she did. But if she does, it won't break her. Andy then asks for final words. And Wendy says, I'm not on the other side of this yet. And I'm not out of the storm, but because I am in the storm, I know I'm already a better woman. So then Andy thanks Monique and Karen and also thanks them for their contribution to the show since it is its 10th anniversary. Then they wrap things up. So Monique and Karen exit the stage, and someone did mention that Gizelle didn't have a package, and I was like, oh, of course she didn't, because she didn't have a storyline. That should say a lot. You didn't have a package on the season. Why don't you have a pink slip? Anyway, so Andy then asks them what did they learn this season. And Angel says not to skip over things that bother you. Tia says be more mindful. Kay says we all have more things in common that we don't. Ashley says that we are all a sisterhood. I need to be more sisterly. Gizelle then says, well, since I didn't get a package, I'll let y'all know that my children are great. One of my daughters is an AKA. I've been doing a lot of dating. I'm looking for quality now. I'm looking at new business endeavors. We have grown and changed as a group the 10 years, and I will do better at embracing the different dynamics. Okay. Stacey says, I will continue to be me and never change, but also need to be more direct. And then finally, Wendy says, I want to lead with kindness. The women were actually very kind. So it sounds like Wendy thought they were going to be tough on her and we're going to drag her. And she says that especially Monique has been the most supportive. And with that being said, they bring out the champagne and they take a cat selfie. I thought that was a nice way for them to wrap it up. Oof. And yeah, that is the end of the season. Listen, you guys, great third part, great reunion. I think this is going to go down as one of the best reunions of Potomac. Obviously, season 5 will be the number 1, and this might be number 2, to be honest. But yeah, it was a great reunion. It was a great season. I really enjoyed it. They brought it. The Potomac ladies are strong. 10 seasons in. It's one of my favorite cities of the whole Housewife franchise. And it's always kind of special when I recap Potomac because Potomac was the first show I recapped on my channel. Some years ago. So I love Potomac. I'm looking forward to the next season. There were parts, when the reunion was so good that I was like, bring everyone back. This is real good drama. But Kate does not need to come back. Jazzy doesn't need to come back. Ashley doesn't need to come back. Now, obviously, do I think they're going to get rid of Ashley? No. But if it were up to me, I would give Tia and Angel one more chance. I like them. And yeah, I'm excited to see what next season will look like. Now, listen, Wendy is right. The ladies were kind to her. And I'm not mad at it. Because when someone's already, that old saying, don't kick people when they're down. Wendy's down. She's being indicted by the feds. We know that she will probably be found guilty if she goes to trial and has all this. There's too much evidence. There's way too much. Email talking about what else can we put on the claim. I think she is going to be guilty. Will she take a plea deal? I don't know. We're going to have to, stay close to the story and see. But I'm glad they didn't go in, because it's not great to see people kick someone when they're down already, and that they were supportive. But yeah, you guys, what were your thoughts about the overall season? Who needs to come back? Who can go if it were up to you? Let me know. Thank y'all so much for watching my recaps. 20 weeks we recapped the season of Potomac. I will definitely be back to recap the Real Housewives of Atlanta, which is coming back. But I'm gonna miss Potomac Sundays. I love a Potomac Sun, especially Potomac plus Married to Medicine. That little combo is unmatched. But yeah, thank y'all so much. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll catch y'all next time. Y'all have a great one. Bye.